What's up, guys? Ben from Underrated Garage here, and it's an exciting day. The 300ZX is officially outside again. It's been sitting in the garage. You can see all my rides in one frame. You have the two JDM Legends sitting in the driveway next to each other. This one that I've been working on for years, and this one that I just got a couple months ago. Before I'm all out of daylight here, let me pop the hood and show you this tucked bay. So here it is. If you know anything about the 300ZX, you know one of the things they're most famous for is how packed everything is into the engine bay and that it barely fits. I mean, you can see it's still a big engine, but with those shock towers and tubs cleared out, it looks so much more empty in here. These VG30s are a big pain in the ass. Everyone knows it. It's true. I'm sure if you have a really low mileage example, well maintained, it's not too bad. It won't give you too much of a hard time, but still, when you have to do maintenance on it, it is a pain to get your hands in there and just to access things. I'm gonna put some videos up on the screen right now of how this thing looked when I got it 2.5 years ago now. It was really rough. I found this car basically rotting away on the side of someone's house because it was an abandoned project and it didn't run. There had been rodents that got to it. It had all kinds of ghetto DIY wiring and just spray paint everywhere. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad this thing was. So probably the biggest change, the one a lot of people will do on this chassis, is tucking this massive fuse box that sits right here on this wheel tub. It's a big box, goes here, it has all kinds of harnesses connected to it and around it. It basically takes up this whole thing. So there's a couple ways to get rid of that. I've seen videos where they'll just rewire it to be down there, but then there's a ton of heat going to it from the header that's right there, and it's kind of a dangerous place to have it, but it is the laziest way to do it. Some people will keep the fuse box here but get rid of all the wiring around it, and that is a cleaner look if you don't mind having the big box there, but that's not a true tucked look. What I opted to do was I didn't have to cut and splice all the wires. I did have to take apart the fuse box and take each individual part out so that you can fish the wires through. And you basically run them down underneath, run the wires right through there and up to right here. You can just put some self-tappers in, mount that fuse box there, and the wires still reach. The only two wires that don't reach are the ones that go back to the power steering rack. So you only have to cut and extend 2 wires. Everything else is just unplug and then plug back in the right place. So that one's really not crazy hard to do. So for the USDM driver's side strut tower, there's normally the big fuel filter right here, and there's an electronic box right there behind that has some relays in it. Super easy. All I did was, for the fuel filter, I just got some fuel injection hose and clamps right here and just extended it, and it just sits down there below the clutch master cylinder. You could run an inline towards the rear of the car or change the setup altogether, but just to simply clear up this space right here, that was all I had to do, was put it back behind there. And then for the electronic part that has the relays, all you gotta do is unplug it and fish the wires through that hole that you can kind of see right there, and then plug it back in and zip tie it up. For this rear corner, there was just one thing that I really changed up, which was there's a little fuse panel right here that bolts here. I just unbolted that, ran it down. You can see where those wires go to is a hole on this side, and same thing, I just rewired that to there, and zip tied that up. Now this area right here is also a pretty cluttered one. If you have an automatic car, you have a bracket right here that has some wiring bolted to it and some bulky harnesses going here, and then all the Z's have their power steering reservoir sitting right here. Manual cars, they had a clutch bleeder, a secondary clutch bleeder, as well as the one in the slave cylinder that came from that clutch line right there up to here. What I did was took that off, I drilled out the brackets, ran a new clutch line, deleting that distribution block going straight to the slave cylinder. For the power steering reservoir, that's definitely a controversial one, because there's a reason that it sits right there stock. It sits right above the power steering pump. I relocated it to below this nose panel. A lot of people will do that, and they'll put it down at the bottom where you clear up some space and you can get it in there nicely. But then that reservoir is sitting lower than the power steering pump. What I did was I mounted it up higher. Basically, the cap to the power steering reservoir is right below this nose panel. So it is still sitting higher up than the steering pump, and I still do have power steering that is functioning. You have a skinny line and a fat line that comes off of it. The skinny one goes to a hard line under there, so you can just cut that hard line in the middle and run a soft line that's rated for power steering fluid right up to that skinnier nipple on the power steering reservoir. And then the fat line is what goes to the pump and feeds it. So that, you can see, I have a fat hose that loops around and goes right to that. So rather than having my coolant overflow in that driver's side fender well, I have this aluminum Mishimoto coolant overflow that you can see right there. That is just held on where the intake holds onto the car under there, and then the hose goes right to it. I don't think you can see it, but attached to the T-bar that the hood latch goes on, I have a catch can there because this thing loved to burn oil. So I have a catch can that hoses come out from the breathers on the valve covers, go down to it, tee into the in, and then the out tees and comes out and goes to the intakes. Coming to the middle here, another really controversial topic is deleting that clutch fan that 300ZXs and a lot of other 90s cars have and making it an electric fan. You can see on the water pump pulley, there's those 4 bolts right there that are normally studs that the clutch fan bolts to, so that's always spinning. It's not a bad idea, and I know it does function okay. Mine was cracked and the shroud was missing when I got the car, so I didn't feel bad at all about deleting that. It cools this thing fine even on hot days with the hood closed, and that's that. AC lines would also clutter up the bay a bit. This thing already didn't have AC when I got it, so I didn't even have to pull that off. I also have the PTU, which is the power transistor unit that normally sits right there on the front timing cover. That's rewired. I cut open the harness and did not have to resplice the wires. I just opened up the harness and rerouted the wires, and that thing is sitting under this headlight right here. So instead of big harness going across here and that piece sitting there, it's nice and tucked there. I hope you found this video somewhat helpful. If you have a 300ZX or even a different car but you wanted some tips on how to clean up your bay, those are the things that you can change up. And there might be better ways to do it, and there's different guides online, but that's how I decided to do it on this car. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just a little basic video on my engine bay setup for now, and an update on the car, but there's a lot more coming to this car and this car very soon. The videos are only going to get better from here, and we're going to be doing some fun stuff this season. So stay tuned. Subscribe, like the video, Check me out on Instagram.